In 6 Feet Under, death is such a central theme, it is a narrative. This show is about a young man's confrontation with death, and I think that for some it's easy to forget that Nate is the main character. Claire feels more like the main character because her growth is focused on, and I would agree that she does feel overall like the central character, but not necessarily the main character. The writing is so good in this show that all of the Fisher children have equal worth. Because Claire is the youngest, she has the most development to show over the years that the show takes place. Perhaps this is part of why we have a lot of youth-based television. Once an adult gets to a certain point, most of their world development is already established, and they turn inwards, which is hard for a lot of people to externalize relatably. We see that with David, Nate, and their mom. We also see this with Brenda. We catch Billy as he is moving past the physical lines that naivete drew into the reality of his mental situation. When death becomes so central that it's a narrative, we are able to focus on things in a much different way that evokes change. This is what a lot of near-death experiences do for some people, and it's not something that sinks into Nate until he is diagnosed with his AVM. We can draw a parallel here with Breaking Bad, Sopranos, and even The Last of Us, between men diagnosed or threatened with a constant near-death battle. When Nate finds out about his diagnosis, he's at the beginning of a new chapter in his life. This ticking time bomb, as they describe it, becomes something he grows to accept. He decides to become brave enough to share with his loved ones. This change he decides to make becomes more important and integral than any of the changes he had just made or were forced upon him. There's a saying that goes, "You can move anywhere, but your problems will still follow you." Nate's near-death perspective on life gives him thoughts, questions, and motivations that would otherwise not occur. Freedom is a central theme as well. The way we live our life is equal to the choices we make. Freedom comes where we can take it as a gift, and it can become a prison if it's not utilized in the way it's needed. We know individualism as a trait has been abused and cash-cowed into more of a mockery than it was 20 years ago. People openly live lives of avoiding commitments and have turned the most negative sides of individualism into something to profit off of. When this show was first airing, the genuine roots of individualism can be appreciated and understood in a more shallow way, but it's hard not to see where the worst of human habits have been predicted. Each of the Fisher children have a version of freedom that allows them to evolve into their most authentic selves. David is able to progress past his self-hating homophobia. Claire becomes more secure in herself and validated in ways she wouldn't have predicted if not for taking chances. Nate stops running away and comes to terms with his maturity, responsibilities, and eventually his impending fate. We also view the theme of freedom in Brenda and Billy's relationship. They counted on each other for freedom from the oppression they felt from their parents and other authority figures. Brenda, although not wholly responsible for Billy's mental state, never knew of and now finds hard to accept the damage she's caused for him. Billy tries to find freedom in a way that gets him confined, which of course ends up being a good thing. Most importantly, the theme of freedom guides the Fisher parents, Ruth and Nate Sr. Nate feels freedom with death. His appearances throughout the show thereafter are projections of the kids' imaginations because he only knows what they know. In flashbacks and in fragments of spoken memories, we can see that he seemed to be mentally detached from the world he inhabited to an extent. While he was, in a sense, the most engaged with the world around him, building a business, a family, and having a life outside those things, he didn't seem to know how to relax around his family until the end of his life. By then, he had already instilled a pattern of behavior in the people around him. This is something people do when they are left with questions about a person they know personally and spend time around. While it might be the most obvious in negative settings, neutral and positive settings are also a result of pattern creation. We see the results of his family dynamic after he's passed, combined with Ruth's style of parenting. Ruth's change is a remarkable storyline because it started off-screen years before we as the audience is introduced. This is not glorifying her infidelity in any way. In fact, let's take her decision to change as her karmic punishment for infidelity. While she loses Hiram the same way she got him, by cheating, she just isn't as attached to those men as other women would be to their husbands or lovers. Should she be? Although we don't generally see many women like her in the spotlight, they have always existed. In the first season alone, she goes through very dramatic character development. One thing I can make clear that I've learned over time is that people do not change, their responses and decisions do. When someone changes, it can be through the result of many different things, all dependent on that individual's perception. When someone expands their perception, their responses and decisions tend to change. The Fisher children have always seen their mother as neurotic and dismissible because her anxiety and her presence causes unrest in them. I think we have all experienced the feeling of not knowing what to say or trying to figure it out and feeling frozen while someone is watching us, getting steadily more uncomfortable. Because the Fishers, like so many American families, valued action over understanding. There are so many miscommunications, things left unsaid, thoughts and questions that didn't occur while Nate Sr. was alive, when they had the chance to get real answers, and when their father had the chance to give them out. Ruth desires to have those answers. She didn't get them from her family or her husband. She didn't know how to ask, and they didn't know how to tell. So when she starts exploring herself, new relationships, the program, she starts testing out what she's learned. This causes the children to react uncomfortably by becoming weirded out and annoyed until Ruth starts to say how she actually feels. They, like so many others, developed an aggressive apathy towards other people's emotions because they didn't want to feel responsible for them. They respond as if she is trying to be manipulative or underhanded when she is simply trying to communicate. That phenomenon to me has become one of the clearest indicators that someone is still ego-driven. It is interesting how people act when they expect things to be all about them. It shows firstly how we need others to regulate ourselves, and secondly that this is common for people to do once they've introduced a life-changing system to themselves. When Ruth decides to employ pattern-breaking actions into her life instead of just talking about what she's learned, that shows us that she understands it now. That understanding is the first stop on her journey. From this scene forward, her demeanor changes and we are able to see more depth in Ruth. Her children still see her as being neurotic and strange, but the more committed she is to breaking those patterns and living life in a way she desires, the more open and loving her children become as well. If you are a parent, never underestimate the power of guided transparency. Never let your child sit alone with questions. Show them that they are worth the time. The season ends with the theme of hope. Nate and Brenda's relationship becomes more secure and established. David becomes more comfortable with himself and finds confidence in being open. We are concerned for Claire as she is unaware of Gabe's death to his negative side, but we hope things will turn out well for her. We're eager to see where the next season picks up. When confronted with death, the only healthy response is hope. Death is inevitable, unavoidable, and from there we can realize our true ability to choose. We understand ourselves through death and other inevitable, unavoidable instances, by choice or not. The best thing we as individuals can truly do for ourselves is understand the world around us and our world inside it. We are all the same person, each a brilliant facet in the same gem, endlessly being admired in the light. To understand ourselves is to know our place in life and how we can contribute to the world. If you can change aspects of your life for the better, that does change the world. You receive a response whether you know it or not. You do matter. What I enjoy about this show in general is the theme of commitment. In season 1, we see commitment built, broken, shared, imagined, and proven between all of the different characters. Billy and Brenda have such a commitment to each other that they have symbolic names tattooed on each other's backs for each other. Nate begins to feel threatened and creeped out by this unhealthy connection shared between the two until Billy mentally breaks. This relationship is disturbing for many obvious reasons, but as I've stated before, they counted on each other deeply. Their parents' inappropriate, dehumanizing reactions to their children's intelligence and mental health turned their bond into a trauma bond, one that was mainly fueled by Brenda being the older sister. This is not me saying that as a child she should have been more responsible than the adults around her. This is me saying as someone with the little brother who I watched over and protected. Brenda funneled her experiences with her parents towards her brother, who was her only friend and confidant. Although she was a child and didn't know any better, that was abusive of her to Billy. It had effects on him that he had to come to terms to. He didn't have the relationship with his parents that Brenda had. He didn't feel the way Brenda felt about things. She gave him no space to express himself except to parrot her own opinions back to her. Even if he wasn't mentally ill, his mentality would have still been affected by the way he had been treated. The healthy way to have gone about guiding her little brother would have been to quit challenging the adults around her and focusing on protecting him. She didn't know it, but by playing along with their games, she wasn't smarter than them. She was just entertaining them in a different way than they expected. All of it was dehumanizing. The solution would have been to reclaim her humanity. And although that sounds like a challenging feat for a child, what would have truly been preventing her or someone like her specifically from doing so? Brenda pressures Nate for a commitment, or at least asks for some kind of affirmation. It's not an unreasonable request, but given the context of her life, we are waiting for the proof that what she is saying is out of devotion and not as a rebound from her brother. In a different relationship, David explores his commitment to God and what that looks like in reality as opposed to living in shame. He is committed to doing the right thing, which makes him an admirable person despite the mistakes he made. Keith is able to explore himself in a healthier way, but the way he shows up for David screams the propensity for them to rekindle their romance. You don't show commitment to someone you are trying to get over. Can we consider commitment to be a tool? The last most notable theme I noticed in the first season of 6 Feet Under is the effort of breaking expectations and subverting stereotypes. If we were to encapsulate that action and feeling in a word, would it be transcendence or defiance? I've mentioned before that I'm glad that the character of Claire retains an age-appropriate mind of naivete that makes her realistic, as well as provides a refreshing perspective that doesn't pigeonhole her into a projection of a teen girl. This would be an example of transcending stereotypes. Keith and Claire even discuss this, where he describes a complex experience of being someone who subverted stereotypes by becoming a police officer, but stepped into another set of stereotypes projected onto him by men that he thought he was interested in. He describes his appreciation for David, who is very open-minded and accepting towards others. The stereotype he defies is that although he is blessed with the safety to be openly gay, he is self-hating, and that controls his life for the first season. Ruth transcends the stereotype of being a people-pleaser. Old mothers, particularly of the boomer and early Gen X generations, are generally people-pleasers. To be more specific, once a person goes long enough people-pleasing and suppressing their desires, they turn into bitter and mean people. They're very resentful and will try acting like they're not, but it's where the root of passive aggression comes from. It's just not natural for people to think of themselves as secondary. We are equal. They victimize themselves and develop awful emotional habits as ways to cope. Ruth had been that person before being confronted with her husband's death. She was 2 years deep into Hiram. The guilt and shame consumed her after Nathaniel Sr. passed away, to where she collapsed at his funeral, victimizing herself yet again. What we support her for is her ability and motivation to reflect on these things, break it off with her cheating partner, and start finding herself. Nate Jr. defies stereotypes. While someone in his condition and context of life could generally be motivated to rationalize one's life and realize what is definitively in their control, he doubles down. He has momentary lapses of good judgment, but only as it corresponds to the narrative he's built for his life. While he accepts his new role as co-owner of Fisher & Sons, and he's correct in saying that he's been running from his true calling his whole life, he still fights it. He tries to pass off work and is careless. He has learned people-pleasing from his mother, and again, while he still makes good judgment calls here and there, he has a habit of supporting the wrong thing and simply being immature. It makes sense that his soulmate is Brenda, who has learned to people-please in a different way, and like Ruth, has lost herself. She's the snarky manic pixie dream girl that people would expect Claire to be, as people imagine teen girls to behave. Being in your 30s and acting like an imaginary teenager is never a sign of mental health. She doubles down on her mentality even after her drama with Billy. She and Nate are both in their 30s, exhibiting millennial behavior, but are both mid-Gen X. The first season of 6 Feet Under is a great introduction to our main characters and an interesting reintroduction to the real world. The perspective of relating life to death so heavily isn't something that people generally explore, and only in the last decade has the goth subculture become more of an accepted mainstream. I feel like people have been so thirsty for media that feels realistic but actually avoid reality. People want a scripted and generated life experience like this one, because in many ways reality isn't safe. So, what do you decide to do when you can name and see the threats in your life? Comfy people without commitment to themselves end up fighting random representations of externalized issues while neglecting who they are in real life. Real change requires work. Real control requires communication and is never held by just one person, unless it is purely over themselves. People make mistakes and get messy. The normal thing to do is move on. In case it needs to be said, this doesn't extend to putting others in harm. I'm asking you why you feel self-righteous and resentment when you don't get your way. What are you willing to do to ensure that you can handle the good with the bad? You know that you're going to die. What are you doing to ensure what you look back on feels like you did your best?